The millionaire who humiliated a stranger until fate turned the tables. The city always looked different from the glass walls of a penthouse. Below, life moved in ways that mattered little to Jonathan Pierce, billionaire heir and self-made mogul by inheritance and shrewd manipulation. To him, people were either obstacles or tools, useful or negligible, nothing in between. Every morning he awoke to the sterile perfection of his apartment, polished floors, the scent of imported cologne lingering from his last meeting, the hum of the city muted beneath triple-paned windows. Jonathan prided himself on control. He controlled his schedule, his investments, his reputation. He controlled the lives of those who depended on him. But what he did not, and would never truly understand, was that control was an illusion, fragile as glass and easily shattered. It was a Friday afternoon when he left his office, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his gold watch gleaming in the sunlight. His chauffeur opened the car door for him, and as he stepped onto the sidewalk, he noticed a young man sitting on the curb. Black skin, tattered clothes, barely more than a boy in age, though the life etched lines of hardship onto his face. Jonathan's lips curled into a smirk, his mind instantly crafting a story. Another loser in the endless line of failures below him. "Move along, kid," he said, voice sharp and commanding. "You don't belong here." The young man looked up. His eyes were calm, measured, and in them was a quiet defiance Jonathan did not expect. He took a deep breath, standing slowly. "I'm just sitting," he said, voice steady. "No harm done." Jonathan's laugh was cold, almost cruel. "No harm. You're blocking my way, and that's more than enough." The confrontation escalated quickly. Jonathan's words cut deep, laced with scorn. He ridiculed the boy openly, making a scene in front of passers-by, laughing at the idea of someone so powerless standing in his path. The young man's dignity, however, never broke. He merely nodded and stepped aside, allowing Jonathan to pass. For a moment, Jonathan felt victorious, as if the world had bent to his will again. But as he drove away, the image of the boy lingered, not in fear or shame, but in quiet resilience. Something about that gaze unsettled him, gnawing at the edges of his ego. That night, Jonathan hosted a dinner for investors in his penthouse. Crystal chandeliers reflected the city lights, and the room smelled of expensive wine and polished wood. Every conversation was about power, profit, and prestige. Yet, amidst the laughter and toasts, Jonathan felt an unfamiliar sense of emptiness. A subtle, nagging thought invaded his mind. Why did that boy's eyes stay so calm when I humiliated him? He dismissed it. Billionaires didn't dwell on inconsequential street encounters, and yet the thought persisted. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, stock reports, and high-stakes negotiations. But Jonathan's sleep was restless, haunted by fleeting visions of the young man sitting there, calm, almost knowing. It became a fixation. He found himself leaving his office at odd hours, walking the streets he once ignored, searching for the boy. But the city was vast, and he found no trace. Then one evening, fate, or coincidence, intervened. Jonathan attended a charity gala, a glittering affair filled with philanthropists and socialites. A presentation began, showcasing initiatives for underprivileged youth. As he watched the videos, a face appeared on the screen. The same boy, now in a professional setting, leading a community program. His calm eyes met the camera with an unwavering intensity, commanding respect without a single harsh word. Jonathan felt a jolt, a mixture of recognition and disbelief. The boy he had humiliated had transformed adversity into strength. The realization struck him harder than any financial loss ever could. He had underestimated a life, believing control over another was permanent. From that moment, the narrative of Jonathan Pierce's life began to fracture. Every decision, every conversation, every action seemed suddenly smaller, inadequate, superficial. For the first time, he sensed the fragility of his constructed empire, and it terrified him. But the boy, whose name Jonathan learned was Malik, was not done teaching him. Their paths would cross again, and the lessons would escalate beyond public embarrassment. Jonathan's arrogance had set the stage for a reckoning, one that neither money nor influence could prevent. By the end of part 1, Jonathan Pierce stood at the precipice of change. The streets he once scorned had shown him a reflection he could not ignore. His power was transient, his cruelty visible, and his humanity questionable. The city around him continued its indifferent rhythm, but Jonathan's life had shifted. The first cracks had appeared in the veneer of his perfection, and soon those cracks would widen. Fate, it seemed, had its own plans. After the gala, Jonathan Pierce could no longer ignore the gnawing unease that had begun to infiltrate his life. Malik's presence, even in a brief video, lingered in his mind like an accusation. That calm defiance, that unshakable dignity, was a mirror Jonathan had never wanted to look into, yet now could not turn away from. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless, not financially, not socially, but morally, spiritually. The streets he once traversed with arrogance were now haunted by the memory of a boy he had belittled, and he could no longer dismiss it as inconsequential. Jonathan tried to regain control through business. He threw himself into high-stakes acquisitions, ruthless deals that would cement his empire for decades. But no contract, no investment, no boardroom victory could fill the void Malik had exposed. His employees noticed a shift. Jonathan's usual commanding presence now carried a subtle edge of insecurity, a tension they couldn't name. Unable to contain the unease, Jonathan began searching for Malik. Weeks of inquiries, discreet investigations, and relentless searching through social programs and community centers finally led him to a modest neighborhood on the edge of the city. Malik was there, not in the limelight of wealth or fame, but teaching young children how to read and write, showing them respect and attention that transcended circumstance. Jonathan watched from a distance at first, feeling an unfamiliar sting of shame. He remembered the sidewalk, the taunting words, the cruel laughter. And he realized that Malik had done what he could not, turned humiliation into strength, and strength into compassion. Summoning his courage, Jonathan approached. Malik looked up, recognition flickering in his eyes, but without anger, without scorn, only measured calm. "Jonathan Pierce," Malik said, his voice steady. "I wondered when you would show up." Jonathan's throat tightened. I didn't understand," he said, struggling to find words that could convey the turmoil inside him. I was wrong. About you. About me. About everything." Malik nodded. "Acknowledging that is a start, but words alone aren't enough." Over the following weeks, Jonathan returned regularly. He observed Malik's work, listened to the stories of the children he helped, and began to see the world from a perspective he had ignored all his life. Each visit chipped away at his arrogance, replacing it with something he had never truly known: empathy. But transformation is never easy. Jonathan's old life clung to him, demanding attention, power, and control. His business associates mocked his sudden focus on philanthropy, dismissing it as weakness. Friends and family questioned his choices, and internally, Jonathan wrestled with guilt and regret for every cruel action, every moment of arrogance that had once defined him. The turning point came during a community event Malik organized, a fundraising initiative for children from disadvantaged neighborhoods. Jonathan, now fully committed, took a hands-on role, helping set up, organizing resources, and speaking with parents and children. He saw firsthand the impact of compassion, patience, and humility. Then, in a moment charged with irony and poetic justice, an incident occurred. A wealthy developer arrived at the event, attempting to dismiss Malik's efforts, mocking the children, and belittling the organizers. Jonathan, who had once been that exact figure of cruelty, stepped forward, not with money or influence, but with unwavering support. His calm authority and understanding of both worlds, wealth and hardship, shut the man down in a way no force could have. Malik looked on, nodding, silently acknowledging Jonathan's growth. Through this experience, Jonathan Pierce realized the most profound lessons of his life. 1. Power is fleeting, but integrity endures. 2. Humiliation can destroy or strengthen. It is the choice of the one who suffers. 3. True influence is measured not by wealth, but by the lives one uplifts. In time, Jonathan became a different man, not perfect but human in a way he had never allowed himself to be. He worked alongside Malik, supporting education programs, advocating for equal opportunities, and using his resources to amplify voices long silenced. The memory of that day on the sidewalk remained with him, a reminder that life's harshest lessons often come from the least expected sources. Jonathan Pierce had been humbled, transformed, and finally awakened to the reality he had ignored for decades. Compassion is more powerful than wealth, and humility is more enduring than fame. The city continued its indifferent rhythm, but Jonathan's life now moved with purpose, and Malik, once a boy humiliated by arrogance, now stood as a teacher, a guide, and a living testament to resilience. Together, they had rewritten the story, a story not of wealth or humiliation, but of redemption, transformation, and the unbreakable strength of human dignity. By the end, Jonathan understood fully. The true measure of a man is not in how he dominates, but in how he rises after being humbled, and how he chooses to lift others along the way.